Welcome back to Objective 3 in Chapter 4 of Unit 8 in our 4A series, and this thankfully will be a much shorter objective than the last two. So in this objective we're going to interpret the information on a motor nameplate. Now, motor nameplate information, there can be quite a lot of it. However, there are only mainly a few things that we ever wish to look at as regards to a power engineer. However, for completeness, so from the textbook's point of view, we'll just briefly cover what each one of these things are. And all of these are requirements as required by the NFPA 70, which is the National Fire Protection Act number 70. And this is basically the National Electrical Code. So we'll talk about things such as the frame, the enclosure, the manufacturer, the voltage and the current ratings, frequency, speed, rated temperatures, duty ratings, power ratings, and finally what the NEMA code is all about. So to help us in our chat about this topic then, I'm going to use a fictitious motor nameplate that I managed to find off the internet. You do have another one in your textbook, it's just a little bit harder to read there on page 36, and this one looks a lot more brighter on the presentation, so it should be a lot easier for us to read and point out the various information on it. And next time you're in the power lab, I strongly encourage you to find an electric motor and then check out the information on that nameplate and see if you can deduce some of these things from it. Okay, so let's start off talking about the frame. Just like any piece of equipment, it's going to have a frame size, and that frame size is going to be based upon two things. That is the kilowatt, or the power rating of the motor, and also its rated speed, which will be due to the number of poles within it. Now, this rating system comes from something called NEMA, and NEMA is an acronym for the National Electrical Manufacturers Association. So looking at this table on page 37 in your textbook, let's say, for example, that we wanted a 10 horsepower motor that would be suitable for rotating at 3600 revs per minute. If you look down the horsepower column, you can find 10, then read to the right until you find this 3600 column, and you will see that that motor would have a frame size of 213T. So now you know what frame size you need to order from a manufacturer's catalogue if you're trying to find a motor that will satisfy those ratings. Now, don't worry too much about horsepower and kilowatts at the moment. They are interchangeable. One's just a metric power rating and the other one is an imperial rating. But that's all frame size is about. Now, the next thing to mention is enclosures, and there are absolutely loads of these different types of enclosures, as you can see here on my list here that I got out of NEMA. Now again, NEMA recognizes these types of arrangements for enclosures of the way in which the frame is going to surround the electric motor. Now, we're not going to talk about all of these. I'll just point out a few common ones that you're going to find on your travels. So the first one here is ODP, standing for Open Drip Proof. Now this one basically has a vent at the top of the motor, as you can see here in the image, and that is to allow air to come into it and cool it. However, there is no fan mounted on the end of the shaft, and that vent is angled at 15 degrees to prevent water from permeating its way in to the electric motor. Applications for this are typically in dry locations that are relatively clean, meaning not dusty or dirty with things floating around in the atmosphere. Another example is a splash-proof motor. So this is very similar to the ODP one, only now the angle of the vent is greater than 60 degrees from the vertical to prevent water entering into it. So in other words, it will withstand slight splashes onto the motor. It will not withstand somebody hitting it with a hose pipe. If you want to do that, you need a different type of rating. So that's a splash-proof one. Again, where would you find these? Indoors, slightly dustier environments than you'd find for the ODP, but certainly somewhere where there's not going to be any direct water sprayed upon it. Another example now is weather protected. Well, obviously these ones are suitable for outdoor use, as weather protected frames are going to prevent the ingress of rain, snow or airborne particles. So most of the motors that you will see outside are going to be this particular rating. The next one is TEFC, standing for Totally Enclosed Fan Cooled. If you're in Europe, you often see this as TEFV, Totally Enclosed Fan Ventilated. Same thing. This idea is the ones that you see inside of our power lab, where basically there is a fan inside of the fan cowling mounted at the end of the shaft, and it will blow air down through the stator and the rotor housings to keep it cool and to remove the hot air from it. So that's the idea of a TEFC motor. Very common, and again, you'll find these ones in our power lab for things like our feed water pumps. The next one is TEAO. This is totally enclosed air open. So this one you can see has a big open air grill on the end. So this one is not suitable for areas that are dusty or where water is likely to spray into them. You often see these things being used when they're mounted internally to the equipment, such as inside of an AHU, an air handling unit, or inside of a furnace draft arrangement. So for example, if you took the cover off your furnace draft fan in your house, you're going to most likely have a TEAO fan in there that will be belt driven, that's turning your fan to provide airflow throughout your house. You also see these little ideas, for example, inside of large computers and places like that. The next one is a waterproof one. These ones will withstand direct spray from, for example, high pressure hoses. So in installations or plants that are process plants that make either food products or chemicals or things like that, where hygiene is very important and they have to be regularly sprayed down and cleaned, these are often the types of motors you find in there, as you can literally hit these with a hose pipe and no water will ingress inside the motor. This one is referred to as a TENV one, or TENC, which would be totally enclosed, non-cooled, or totally enclosed, non-ventilated. And that just means it basically doesn't have a fan on the end. The next one is for Class 1 Div 1 environments, and this is our EXPL rated motor, or the explosion proof one. This basically has a motor frame that's much more heavy duty, made of a cast metal. So these ones obviously will withstand an explosion and not form shrapnel and add to the damage of that explosion. So anywhere in refineries, gas plants, oil plants, etc., if it's a Class 1 Div 1 environment, these are the motors that you are going to find located in there. Okay, so on our fictitious nameplate then, here we can see what our enclosure is. And this particular one is labelled as capacitor run controlled, which is one of the ones we didn't mention. And that just simply means that within inside the casing of this motor, there are capacitors inside it. Okay, let's move on then. The next thing to mention is our insulation class, and once again this is a NEMA rating, and this is either going to be A, B, F or H, and it's going to rate the insulation of the windings versus or with respect to temperature. Now the reason why this is an important consideration for motor construction is that the higher the insulation rating, the more hours it will be able to withstand running at higher temperatures. Now a surprising rule here is that for every 10 degrees C rise in temperature, the insulation's life expectancy is reduced by half. So that's an amazing consideration. So for example, a motor that's going to operate at 180 degrees is only going to last 300 hours if it was Class A insulation. However, if it was Class H insulation, it would last tens of thousands of hours. Now, electric motors are certainly not going to operate typically at 180 degrees. One that's outside or in this typical indoor environments, they're going to typically operate around about 40 to 50 degrees with the heat of the electrical current passing through them. But either or, the Class H insulation is going to be the most heavy duty that will withstand the most amount of heat and therefore last the most amount of time. Looking back at our fictitious nameplate here, you can see here circled is the insulation class of this particular motor, and no surprise, it's the heavy duty one, code H. Our next piece to pick up from on the nameplate is that of the rating or the duty. And this is basically the idea or the rating as to whether or not the electric motor is rated for continuous use or intermittent use. Now, continuous use, of course, would be something like a pump for a feed water pump, or the fan for a forced draft fan, or something like that, because they're going to be running for many, many hours continuously. As opposed to something like a sump pump, for example, which is only going to operate once the sump fills up to a certain level. So you get different ratings depending upon whether the motor's designed to run for a long period of time, i.e. continuous, or short periods of time. Now on our motor nameplate here, you can see under the duty rating here, it's labelled as continuous. So in other words, it's rated to run for long periods of time. The next one is the service factor. Typical service factors on motor nameplates are 115, which means that it is rated that the motor can be overloaded for short periods of time up to 115%. Now, what does overloaded mean? It means basically increase the load by more than 15% of its rating. What's the load? The value at which it can drive. How can you rate the load? You can rate it in load current, or you could rate it in torque. Either or, exceed that by 15%. That's permissible, but only for short periods of time. Ideally, we should not be exceeding these ratings because then the motor will overheat. The next one is our power rating. Power ratings depend upon whether they're going to be metric or imperial. On our fictitious nameplate here, you can see I've got circled HP10, which is horsepower 10, and that's an imperial rating. 1 electrical horsepower is equivalent to 746 metric watts, and you have that conversion factor in your academic supplement, and you have to be confident converting between the two. Because many of our electric motors here in Canada come up from America, they are often rated in horsepower, and we may want to convert that to watts or indeed kilowatts. The next one is our voltage rating. The voltage rating here on our nameplate is rated at 380 watts, and this will give us an indication as to whether the electric motor is a single-phase motor or a three-phase motor. The next one is the ampere rating. The ampere rating is simply how much current the motor is going to draw once at its rated power and its rated voltage. So on our nameplate here, you can see we've got a 15.4 amp rating. That would be at the full load current. That is not the starting current. If this particular motor was not on a VFD, i.e. a soft start, then that current rating could increase by 6 to 10 times during startup. Once startup has been overcome, then it will settle down, and when the motor is delivering full torque at full rated speed, it will now draw 15.4 amps when connected with 380 volts. So that starting current's an important consideration to realise, because this one here could surge as high as 154 amps for a brief period of time when the motor is first started. The next one is our frequency. Frequency, of course, in North America is going to be 60 Hertz. This particular nameplate is stamped at 50 Hertz. So you could deduce from that that this motor is being manufactured for use in Europe, which work off a 50 Hertz frequency. But that just gives you an indication as to what the characteristics of the supply are required to be. The next one is the phase. This will either be 1 or 3. 1 would be single phase, 3, as indicated here on our nameplate, that would be for a 3-phase electric motor. And 99% of the motors you're going to see in the plants you'll end up working are all going to be 3-phase motors. The next one is our power factor, which we're going to be discussing in the next objective. Without going into power factor yet at any great detail, you can simply say that the power factor equates to the efficiency of the motor. Now this will either be stamped in a decimal, such as 0.903 in the example on our nameplate here, or as they've decided to show it, 90.3%. Power factor will make more sense after we get through our next objective, but at the moment you can consider it simply as an indication as to the efficiency of the machine. Next is the speed, and once again this is going to be the full load rated speed of the motor in revs per minute. So our particular motor here is rated at 975 revs per minute. If this is an induction motor, which it most likely will be, then that is going to be the rotor speed, which is an asynchronous speed, meaning it's not the speed of the rotating magnetic field. However, if this is a synchronous motor, it will be that speed. So you've got to be aware of what type of motors you have. But again, 99 times out of 100, you're going to be looking at induction motors. And we certainly don't have any synchronous electric motors in our power labs. Okay, the next thing to mention then is the operation and maintenance regards to electric motors. And this is pretty straightforward, and it's virtually the same as what we talked about earlier for DC machines and also AC machines. So we can keep them free of dirt and moisture. Pretty obvious there. Ensure the vents and the fan cowls are clear of dust, debris or ice. As a lot of our electric motors are outside, during our brutal winters here in Saskatchewan/Alberta, it's often common for the cowls to ice over. If you allow the fan cowling to ice over, then we'll reduce the flow of air through them, and that will lead to overheating. So take your pipe wrench or your crescent wrench and just gently tap the fan cowling to remove the ice. And that's certainly something that you have to check on things like cooling towers, where there's a lot of water sort of splashing around and water vapor moving around from the cooling tower. Lubricating the bearings is normally a job left up to the electrician. They generally don't trust us with this because it's very easy to over lubricate a bearing. And you'll be talking about how much lubricant to put into a bearing later in your 4th class studies. Next is to check operating temperatures. We often do this going around with a simple pyrometer here, where you gun the bearings and just make sure that they are not overheating. If they are overheating, then we might, for example, need to increase the cooling water, if there is one, the cooling oil, if there is some, or even something like the fan itself. But we need to check the temperatures of these things to make sure they're not overheating, which means they would go down on over temperatures. The next, checking for vibrations. That's usually a sign that the bearing is on the way out or there's some sort of imbalance in the rotor. And vibrations going to cause damage and wear to the bearings and will eventually cause failure. Next is checking the alignment. We don't really do this. This is a millwright's job, but that's the alignment from the motor shaft to the coupled load shaft. Something like a pump shaft. They have to be perfectly in line, because if not, there's a lot of wear and tear placed on the shaft and we can end up shearing off the coupling. And then finally, we need to check the rotation. And that's certainly something we can do as well. We can make sure these things are rotating in the right direction, as indicated by the arrow on the motor frame. And again, if it's a 3-phase motor and we wish to change rotation, the electrician can swap any 2 phases. Okay, so that's it for Objective 3. A nice short one there, just talking about motor nameplates and basic considerations relating to operation and maintenance. So, give it a quick read. There's not too much there to wrap your head around. And then when you're ready, come back and see me for the last objective, number 4, where we'll start to talk about basic calculations that relate to this thing we've been dancing around, and that is power factor, and then getting on to something called power factor correction, which is looking at the ins and outs and a very brief introduction to it of AC power. So when you're ready, I'll see you back soon for that one. Take care.